Welcome everyone to this Force Friday. We have some exciting ideas to share with you today about one of my most passionate subjects, I would have to say, in the field of art. In fact, as you can see, today's title is, this is a great job opportunity for those of you that are quick sketch artists. This job, in fact, really demands a lot of speed, a lot of draftsmanship. You got to really love to draw, and you have to be, I would say, emotionally thick-skinned enough to do stuff over and over and over and over again. So what is it, right? I wore one of my favorite new T-shirts that I just got just for the occasion, as you can see here, 16.9. So that hopefully will start giving you guys a little bit of a clue of what we're talking about today. And actually, the back of this, just to take a look even further, it's got all these different proportions, right, on it. So what does that mean? Well, these proportions are about the career of storyboarding, right? Storyboarding, one of my favorites. I've done quite a bit of boarding in my career. I love boarding because, as the first part of it says, it's about story, right? And story is so important to the culture of the world, right? Like, we represent morals, right? And who we want to be as a race, or not want to be as a race, through the act of telling story, right? So all the books that you read nowadays, the films that you watch, the comic books that you read, the TV shows, are story driven, right? And a vast majority of the entertainment industry uses storyboarding to get to the finished product, right? It ends up being part of the pre-production process. Does everybody use it? No. In animation, yes, most definitely, right? Because it's the plan. It becomes the visual plan, and it helps keep the budget restraint, so you know what's going to happen from shot to shot. In fact, I know, without mentioning company names and such, but I know of stories where the mere fact of having to go back to storyboarding would really literally tank the cost of a production, right? Because they moved forward after they approved the storyboards and the script, and moved forward, and then realized, what, this still isn't working, and had to go back to storyboarding and to writing, to improve a film, right? So very, very, very important part of the production process. It's really at the core, what I love about it, and it kind of goes into force drawing as well, is you're drawing to think, right? It's almost like thumbnailing. Now, in television, let's say TV, animated television, there's a little bit more demand for cleanup, right? And I've been coming across this a lot lately with students that I'm teaching right now in storyboarding. And I've been connecting them with people who I'm friends with in the industry, who've been board artists for, let's say, 15, 20 years. Some have even moved on to being directors, animation directors. Hearing from them, yeah, if you want to break in, especially in television, you want to be able to clean up like really, really well, right? Because a majority of those shows go overseas, right? And it's going to go to overseas studio. You want to make sure everything's exactly on model and perfect, so the overseas animators can almost like take those drawings, copy them, and go from key to key, and then fill in all the in-betweens and animate the show. So really, really important. You have to have that skill to be on model and to draw neatly. Film is a little different. Animated film, there's definitely more potential for being loose, and the same with live action. Live action, what's changed, I would say, the most in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years is boarding has also been mixed in with sort of like 3D pre-production, where now they have like sort of like 3D mannequins, and they can move the camera around to kind of create the boards and the movement of the camera. In fact, another student of mine is actually doing that, has done it now actually for the last few years through different companies down in Los Angeles, and has worked on even some of the Marvel films and TV shows. So, doing really, really well there. And it's kind of interesting to see, like, how does that work, right? So let's say hello to our other instructors. That's my intro for you guys today. How are you guys doing? How's it going, Swenley?
Yeah, I'm good. Back from Italy and full of Renaissance power.
Yeah, it's great to have you back.
Yeah.
So wonderful to have you. Matunji and I have been doing our best to try to hold down the fort. Just the two of us. So good to have you back. How's it going, Mrityunjay?
Yeah, doing good, guys. I'm just so happy that we're doing the storyboarding thing today because, oh, quick sketch, that's awesome. And now we have a professional profession, that goes by it, that really requires this solid drawing skill and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty excited
Yeah,
to
I
have it.
can very honestly tell all of you here that of all the professions that my students get jobs on, ironically, storyboarding is probably the number one profession that my students move into, because the students usually end up loving drama and dynamism and the posing. And if I can get them some of the other skills that we're going to share with you today, they can actually learn those and they like story, boom, that's the job. And and to be transparent, a lot of art jobs nowadays also move out of the United States to move to other countries where it's less expensive to create. Like, let's say 3D animation or even animation, right? TV animation has been outsourced, to other countries for decades, right? And then 3D animation started getting farmed out. Storyboarding is primarily in the US because it's so close to the directors. It's like very high level creative thinking that's happening. You have to know the culture of the United States to be able to do the boards, and understand the writing and have conversations with the directors all the time. So boarding stays home too, So if you're in the US, or at least US culture well enough, you have a better shot there. If you live in LA, you have an even better shot, admittedly. But with being post-COVID and such, I think that's been more flexible. People are starting to be able to be located in different countries. Either way, I love boarding because I love film, I love stories, I watch a lot of movies, and I love everything about boarding. I love all the I don't want to give anything away, so I just love all the pieces that come together to help create a good board artist. And what's really weird, on another side note, is a lot of my art friends and former students, maybe because a lot of them are former students, are storyboard artists. So I know board artists at Pixar and at Disney, at DreamWorks. I have some board artists that do boarding for live action film, actually, and in video games. So I kind of know people across all those different avenues, and a lot of them are board people, because we have similar passions, right? So let's get to it, right? Let's get started. A lot of fun stuff to talk about today. Just so much to share with you. I'm going to preface today with, there is no way that we're going to fit every damn skill that you need to know to storyboard in 1 hour. Okay, this would really be more like a 10 or 15 week class. Okay, and I would love to put that together. And I think I'm going to be taking components of that, and that they will become classes on drawingforest.com. But it's a lot. There's a lot of different facets to the idea of learning how to storyboard. Okay. A quick backstory. If you're wondering, like, where did this drawing come from? I wrote a script a few years back that story-wise goes back probably more like 20, 25 years for me. And this is a board that I drew for my own film where I was getting ready. And I still haven't done this, and maybe you guys can help hold me to the fire on this, because I have sections of it boarded and the script is fully finished. And I keep thinking about either trying to sell it, and have the boards there to help sell it, to Hollywood, or just literally put the whole movie with voiceover to storyboards as what's called an animatic. An animatic is when you take the boards and you put them on a timeline, basically, right? So now you can watch it. And usually it has voiceover and some scratch track, like music that's not going to be the permanent music. And just put the whole damn thing online, right? Put it on YouTube and go, here's my movie, basically, right? So that's one of my dreams, right? Is to get this thing out. So this is a shot from my film, one of my boards. Let's say, hey, brother, Sketchboard Pro. I don't know if I've used that for there. I know I have. What do I have on here? I might have even gotten rid of it. Yeah, I think I have. Oh, Storyboard Pro. I have Storyboard Pro on my computer. Storyboard Pro, by the way, when it comes to software, is probably the one that most storyboard artists use, especially in animation. So those of you that are interested. So I'm going to hand this over to Swenley. Swenley is going to take over our first step in skills that you need to know. We're basically going to, we're going to be talking about storyboarding. We're going to share with you 4 main buckets. Again, each one of these buckets has many other facets underneath it, just like force does. Like force isn't just like knowing force, it's applied force. It's like rhythm, templates, right? It's like boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, it's like this giant list underneath it. We're going to give you like an overarching view, which hopefully might even help you say, you know what, these are things I'm okay drawing, or I'm interested in learning, or I know how to do these things. Wow, I never really thought about a job as a storyboard artist, right? You never know where, where lightning's going to strike from, right? So, okay, all yours, Swenley. Why don't you take over and get us into the first skill?
Yes, let's see, let's go to the screen. I'll put you guys maybe down here. So the first skill, of course, if you're going to the storyboard and you're going to like draw scenes, one of the main skills is just learning basic perspective. Starting with how to set up basic perspective grids. It's funny because a lot of times during mentorship, when you get the perspective, the first response to students are, well, this is going to be so hard for me, it's really difficult. And then they just learn the rules and then it's easy. And of course you can delve very deep into perspective. Like I was trained as an industrial designer, so you can get very technical, but you don't really need that to work as a professional. Just like a basic understanding of perspective is enough, but if you love it, you can delve deeper, of course. So the first skill is just learn how to set, just learn the basic perspective grids to start with. So we have a 2-point perspective grid here, as probably most of you are familiar with, because we have 2 vanishing points on the left and right. And then we have a 3-point perspective, and we have 2 variations on that. We have a bird's eye view, which is basically when you're looking down at the scene, kind of like a bird flying in the sky. And you have a 3-point worm's eye view. That is when you are looking from the ground up, like while looking at a tall building, for example. And you also have 4-point perspective, which, in teaching, we teach that with like straight lines, just to like stay consistent with the rest. But when you see that in reality, it would be more like a fish eye lens effect, like we see here. So as you can see, like the horizon seems to be around here in the picture, like where all the lines are converging. And we have convergence going up. And we have convergence going down, so we have a vanishing point on the top and the bottom, basically giving us a 4-point grid. And the round is because, lenses are round or eyes are round. So that's why you get this effect. And I know probably some of you might be asking, well, what about 1-point perspective? Well, the thing about 1-point is you will rarely use it. And if you want to know more about that, I would point you to Force Friday number 8. That was a long time ago. But here we talked about 1-point perspective, and Mike did a fantastic demo with a real box to show why the way 1-point is taught out there in most books is not really correct with what you would perceive in reality. So if you want to know more about 1-point, I would say go watch this video. So those are the basic perspective grids. And once you know that, then the question is, where are you going to place the camera? If you're going to like shoot a scene, the camera has to be placed somewhere, right? And you have to make decisions about that. So there are mainly like 2 options for that. You have, well, first of all, like the camera is represented by the horizon line when you're dealing with a scene or a picture. So it could be a camera, it could be your eyes, whatever lens you're viewing the scene through. So as you can see here, there are basically 2 options. You can decide that you're going to place the camera high up. And in that case, you would be looking down at the scene. So if we transfer that into a frame, let's say we're shooting like a scene with a tree, we would be looking down at that tree. And the other option would be to place the camera lower into the scene and look up at the tree. In this case, we would see like the bottom plane of the tree here. So you can place the camera at a high angle or at a low angle. And then the question is, well, when do you choose which one? So basically, when you're dealing with a low horizon line, or as you saw previously, a worm's eye view, it emphasizes the sky. So if you go back here, you can see that when the camera is low, we see more of the sky, and we see just a little bit of the ground plane. And here the relationship is reversed, so here it's more about the ground plane, and we see a little bit of the sky up here, so you get these proportional differences, which will be covered later on. So if you place the camera low, and we look up at the character, at the scene, it makes the character look powerful and dominant in the scene, like you see here. It's also great for making buildings look tall. Like, again, if you look up at a skyscraper, like that's the effect and the experience that you would get. So basically what it is you choose the camera placement primarily based on what kind of emotion you want to evoke with a shot. And that goes back to the story. It's called storyboarding, right? So what's the story, and what emotion do you want to evoke with this particular shot that you're setting up? So here is another low horizon shot. I think this is when they just defeated Loki, and they all kind of like standing and looking down at him. So again, it makes the group of characters, like in this case, look powerful, and they are in control of the scene. That like emotion becomes pretty obvious. And then we have the high horizon or bird's eye view. Now, this is primarily used when, like we saw before, when you want to emphasize the ground plane and show less of the sky. And it makes characters feel inferior or maybe defeated or overwhelmed. Like in this particular scene, in the Avengers, if I remember correctly, this is just when they were looking up at the alien invasion. So they are assembled together, but they are overwhelmed by all these aliens, So this shot was intentionally set up with a high horizon to create or to evoke that feeling. Let's go to the next one. Another high horizon or bird's eye view example. So this one is great because we can see like how far underneath him the street is, and we know he has no superpowers, so if he hits the street, it's game over. So this shot is great for like showing, creating a sense of danger almost, and although technically, like you could say that the horizon is on the scene, because if we extend these lines, it's going to, I think, merge somewhere around here. So you could say the horizon is on the scene here somewhere, but it's still a bird's eye view because the camera is up here in the sky, and we're looking down at the scene. Let's jump to the next one. So once we decided the placement of the camera or the horizon, then the next question is, how close is the camera to the subject? And I think these are familiar terms if you've ever get involved into filming. You have long shot or establishing shot, which is mainly used to introduce a location and like set the context for the story. And I think it's worth mentioning that each one of these type of shots also have their subcategories, but just to keep it simple, I'm just going to mention like the main ones here. So we have the long shot or establishing shot. You have the medium shot, which in general shows an actor from the waist up, and it allows like enough room in the scene to also show the environments and to give context to the story. And next to that, we have the close-up, which is primarily used to like focus on the expression of the character, making that like the dominant element in the scene. And here we can see the other subcategory. Like you have the close-up, and you have what is called an extreme close-up. And again, an extreme close-up is to further emphasize the expression. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Mike, I think, to lead you guys further. Stop the share.
Let me bring that back over to me. Caught me off guard. I was drinking my hot chocolate. Hold on, here we go. All right. I was just reading, there was a couple of questions out there. Corey was asking about the anti-jitter in Photoshop. So while I'm here, I could show you. You know, if you go to the brush tool in Photoshop, it's all the way up here, Corey. There's a thing called smoothing. You can see my brush right now is set to 15%. So the higher you put that, the less jitter there is. And that is important for one of the later conversations we're going to have today. Corey, if you're interested in that kind of work, also, I would look at one of our prior Force Fridays. It was either last week or the week before. We did a whole thing on cleanup. And that was one of the things I believe we talked about there as well. So Mattesi and I are going to cover together this concept of composition, which I've got to tell you is sort of one of my side addictions. I just love composition. I like the idea of composition. I think because personality-wise, just psychologically for me, I like organizing things. And composition is really an organization of elements. And I don't know if I've said this before, but you know, I went through 4 years of art school and I didn't really learn composition there. I learned it along the way on the different jobs I had from different mentors, and just kind of started piecing all this stuff together. And we're going to share with you just a couple of tricks of many, many different tricks in composition. Mattesi and I are going to cover just two of them, two main ones with you today. What I want you to be aware of is what I just said here. Let me write this down. Which is, you know, like, what is composition? I know when I was learning, I was like, I don't even know what it is. Like, nobody can give me a clear answer. And to me, I want to propose the definition of its organization. And the trick, though, is it's organization with a purpose, right? And the purpose is story, right? That's the main purpose, through priority. Right, you're prioritizing things in the shot to know what you want the audience to look at based on what the story is and where is this shot within, let's say, a scene or within the film, to help propel the story forward, right?
We can say that leading the eye, right?
Yeah, leads the eye.
Yeah,
you can call it. Yeah, you can call this that. Yes, thank you. That's definitely a phrase that some people will call this priority idea is lead the eye. Where are you going to lead the eye? Where are you going to make the audience look? That's one piece. That's only one piece. I would say also composition really helps with emotion, right? I mean, Swenley just talked about perspective, and that based on where the camera is, makes the audience feel things. You know, if you're looking up at Batman, then by doing so, you feel his power, versus if the camera were just straight out in line with his eyes, right? Or looking down at him. When I started learning all this stuff, I thought, this is BS. You know, it's all BS. It's like too deep and psychological just on like some simple things. But I'm here to tell you it's not BS, it's true. Just having now been in, like I said, the entertainment industry for so many years, and, you know, watching movies and television, all this stuff, comics, all this entertainment stuff, that this stuff's real and it works. And as someone who's very self-aware and curious, I have to go, well, why does it work? It works. Well, then why does it work? And I really attach a lot of this to our own human psychology as people on the planet Earth, and how we all pretty much grow up the same. You all start off as babies, right? And grow up and become children. And we're all aware of having been in a place of being smaller than all the people around us, right? So we know what it's like to have to look up at people, right? And we know what it's like to finally get older, and with age comes power in a sense, right? Or equality. Maybe a better way of looking at it is an equality amongst all your peers, right? When you're little, you got people bossing you around all the time, right? They're in a power position. They're older than you. They're bigger than you. They're wiser. Imagine if it was inverted. Imagine somehow you were born and your parents are smaller than you. Whoa, really weird, right? Like, we're manufactured babies, and you know, it's like Benjamin Button, right? You get reversed, right? Somehow you start off really, you know, you start off bigger and they're smaller. I'll bet if that was the case, Swenley's whole conversation there would be inverted, right? Looking up would feel like, oh, they're not that powerful. You see, it's a psychological thing, right? So be aware, be aware of that. These things are very real. Even the composition stuff we're going to talk about now is very real. Now, perspective, I want you to be aware perspective and composition are very closely tied together, very closely tied together. I've been teaching composition for, I don't know, maybe about a little over 20 years now. And I've taught it at studios, actually. I don't even talk about that, but I have taught composition at studios. Most places know me for teaching force, but usually once I get in somewhere and I start teaching force, I go, well, I also teach an animation class. I can also teach this like composition class if you want, right? I can also teach the character design piece because I've done all these jobs and or art directed people in these jobs, right? So one of the reason I bring this up is, even though I've been teaching it for so many years, I still keep improving like the steps to how I teach it and finding ways to connect ideas. And the one I'm going to share with you is something I've only sort of, I guess, more clearly recognized as a bridge in only the last like maybe 3 or 4 years, right? And that is composition itself, well, perspective itself. Perspective is a composition tool. Like, I know at the simple level, we all get that. Like, of course it is, because look at what Swenley just told us, right? Of course it's going to be like a composition tool. But composition, like I said, it's an organization of objects. So like, here's a frame. I kind of think of the frame like what we're doing is we have a puzzle, right? And there's these pieces, and I like the abstraction of just like shapes. It's like, oh, well, something's over here. This thing's over here. This goes like this. There's a shape over here, like almost breaking it down into these simple shapes. Now, one of the first lines you can put into a frame is that horizon line. And as soon as you do that, you are picking a priority, right? So let's say I do this, right? And this is ground, G for ground and S for sky. Okay, I've already made a choice, okay? And all art, all great art is really, I think, an awareness of the artist realizing just how much choice you have. I've made a choice. I said, sky is bigger, ground is smaller. But why? Like, why have I done that, right? What's the point of that? Well, most of the action is probably going to happen in the sky, or I need something that has height. I'm going to show off something with height, right? This shot might be about, about some volcano that's over here, right? So here's this volcano. And over here is just, there's a bunch of people here. Maybe there's like roads that go over here, there's small homes. But the volcano is the big thing here. Now, if the volcano explosion is the big thing, this isn't a great shot, right? I would have to say, I'm going to do this. I can go low horizon again, but say, here's a volcano top, right? So now the volcano top isn't the most important thing. The explosion is the most important thing, right? I want all the sky around it. I need the space to show the explosion, right? So what I want you to be aware of in this first step is proportion of how you break up the frame is relevant to the story and priority, right? When I'm teaching, I call this the farm, right? I call it the farm because I kind of look at this as like, this is like a piece of land. And when I teach this, I usually say, hey, you know what, make believe you have a plot of land that you bought, and you have to put, I don't know, corn and lettuce and your house on this plot of land. And the most important thing is the corn. So I might do this and say, corn is really important. Lettuce is not that important. And even less important is my house. So maybe the house is like on some really narrow piece here, and like my home's going to sit here. So you can see I've prioritized the crops and the acreage on the farm relative to what crops are most important, right? So kind of the same thing with composition, right? And then perspective ties into this. So this is the bridge, now it's like, well, where do I want my vanishing points, right? I might put one right here, even at the cross section. I might say that's also where I want the eye to go. I might do something like this and say, here's my perspective plane. Maybe the other point is like really far out of the shot. So it's something like this. You see, and now this all of a sudden, this flat idea of a farm has become something that has dimensional space because of the simple trick of throwing perspective in there. But the decisions were made based on priorities of the farm, right? So that's been this, the farm is not new, but the bridge of how important that line of the horizon is. The farm I've been teaching for more like 15 years or so. Okay. So that's the bridge. What Mrityunjay and I are going to show you is, first of all, Mrityunjay put out some really awesome notes this past week. You know, I guess these are boards that you sketched out from Batman film. Is that what this was, right?
Yeah, I was just watching Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ledger's performance was so amazing as Joker. So I thought, yeah, let's share, you know, what we are doing on Force Friday. And you can see it's like, like boarding is everything. Again, just like Mike said in the beginning, we cannot just share with you like everything in here, like all the way from the script reading and breakdown, all the way through the rendering and everything, to the editing. But these are just made in gold to explain you like the next trick as well, which is gonna be the pointing side. It's like, oh, you, right? Like literally this kind of finger, like pointing,
Mm-hmm.
but also using the perspective and the proportion thing, right? That we talked about. You can see the board on the 8 number, right there, where I put the number 8. So right down there, there's like a 3-point perspective, right? There's like building in there. And so I can just like draw on top of it a little bit, say annotate, and see right there, you know what I just did? I put a line in there. It's like, oh, that's like the that's like the line. And see, like everything is just going into this direction right here. So horizon line is definitely out of the shot somewhere here, but I just quickly did it. Okay. Now, this is actually my idea, the first thing. But obviously, I didn't do the boards in the movie. But if I were to do it like in the actual, like as a storyboard artist, I would have done it. You know, just quickly grab a line, just like point it out this side, and that would be, let's say, my horizon lies out of the page. So what? You know, I just taken the whole board as a ground plane, okay, for my buildings to establish there. So again, I'm just thinking about the composition, but using the perspective to insinuate the idea, right? Or more like that. I believe like Mike can add so many to that as well. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Here are all my drawings in here. Yeah, so something like that, you know, it's just quite cool, you know, just framing the shots using perspective and using the composition as a emotional tool, plus like leading the eye, just like I said.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some. Let's take a look at some shots. I grabbed some that I use in my mentoring quite often to discuss these ideas, right? So the first many shots you're going to see are from the film 300, which is a very artsy film. You know, so the compositions there are even pushed to an extreme that maybe even some other films are not. So it's a really great example of just seeing how this stuff plays out, right? So I'll give you an example. In this one, you know, it's like, look at the proportion, right? So the proportion here is like this. The vast majority of it is number 1 is here, and this is number 2. So it's not like these guys aren't important, because, you know, they're up here and you could see that, not to go into this, but value is another thing that helps point things out. And you can see all the black and white that's happening up there in this bright highlight. But look at the size of this puzzle piece, right? Here's this puzzle piece compared to this puzzle piece, right? So this shot tells you, look at all the skulls that these two guys are looking at. And why, right? There's a reason in the film as to why they're looking at the skulls. But it's almost like when you look at a composition, you can put like a sentence together with like subjects and nouns and a priority of what those subjects are in the sentence by saying, you know, the title of this illustration is da 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 da, and there's a priority to the title of that illustration, and is the illustration doing the job it's supposed to be doing, right? So the title of this illustration would be something like, you know, all of the skulls that represent the soldiers that died in the past that these two other characters, Joe and Harry, are looking down at. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So that's how this stuff starts to work, right? It's like, how do I split up the farm, right, in an effort to prioritize the telling of the story? Okay.
Talking about that shot emotionally, Mike, it's like you were shown these like skulls, right, really close up to your eye. That creates tension, right? Emotionally creates tension. So imagine
Scary.
like, yeah, it's scary. Like it's create the tension in your mind. And it might be happening like unconsciously. You might not be able to like say it or something like that, but in the mind you really feel tension. Imagine these skulls are like really small. They show there's like skulls in the far distance. It would not create as much as tension as you're looking at here, right? So again, emotional, just everything is like kind of combined. You try to like whatever tricks that we are telling you, just like try to combine them in these shots, and you will like know how the storyboarding is starting to kick off, you know, from here.
Yeah, the reason that there's so many, like you said, it's like this is important. This is what the characters are looking at, and there's a emotional weight to that, right? As Mrityunjay is saying, it's like kind of scary that death is involved in this shot, right? It's the weight of death and the risk potentially that maybe the army's going to take or whatever, right, to deal with what the challenges are, you know? Yeah, very good point. Yeah, let's see, let's head back to Photoshop. So here's another shot. This is from 300 as well. And you can see here, you know, the farm, right? So notice really low horizon. And then we have this big block right here. All right, and then this other block right here, and then kind of a third block here. All right, so a lot of negative space over there on the left. So this is important because the shot after this, what we don't see here is the shot after this is the boy is going to go in between two rocks like this and stand here, and he's going to go into like a tunnel that's over here. It's kind of a foreshadowing of things to come. So the big heaviness, the weight of the rock and what it means is already starting to show up here. And also in a sense, you get the fragility of the boy versus this giant rock. All right, his little smallness, and he's got this spear, and yet you have this massive, you know, this massive rock, and what it's going to mean. To give you a spoiler, I guess, if you haven't seen this film, there's a giant wolf that's going to show up here, and he's going to lead the wolf down this like small tunnel and trap it in there. And that is a foreshadowing of how the Spartans in this film are going to fight the other army, right? The idea of coming down a small trench is one way of taking on a big army and shrinking them down to size because you have to put them in a small trench, right? So in a way, this is foreshadowing of that piece, right? This kind of leads me to something else that we weren't really talking about today when it comes to composition. It's kind of, and I'll cover it really quickly. It's almost like a common practice nowadays. It's so ubiquitous that like your iPhone has this as an option on it. And that is to, you know, turn your frame into thirds, right? Because thirds typically push you away from symmetry. When you compose something, normally you're going to land somewhere around these crosshairs or further away from the middle. You know, so instead of those four, you might say my focal point is here, right? I want to lead the eye, as Mrityunjay was saying, I want to lead the eye up there, right? So now I've pushed even away from the third mark, and that pushes to stronger compositions, right? I might say, well, I'm going to put the horizon line through there. So look at this dramatic breakdown that I created of proportion, right?
This is kind of like what they used in the previous shot that you had with the skulls, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in every, yeah, this is almost exactly what I just sketched, right?
Yeah.
Right, like, you know, the idea of, here, let me put that on, you know, it's like, here it is, you know, we could pretty much stretch this out, you know, like this and say, oh yeah, look, there's the composition I just drew, and there it is on the frame, right? So Swenley is on it, it's back and fresh. Right, so you can see like there it is exactly, right? So going back to that, you know, I'm going on a little tangent here, but I think it's worth it. When I'm teaching mentorship, one of the things I bring up is, you know, look, here's sort of the proof of it, right? Imagine you want, you know, you're going to take a picture of your friend, right? So here's two pictures. And in one picture, and your friend is over here, you put him on the third, right? So your friend's here, same place in both photographs. Where you put the horizon line will start to dictate the relationship of your friend to whatever's in the background, because there's something in the background you want to show off, okay? So for instance, let's say there's a stream on the ground. If there's something on the ground, I'm going to put the horizon high so we could see the stream, right? So here's the stream. If it's a city in the background, or I want to show sky, then I'm going to put the horizon low and say, wow, look at that, look at that city in the background, right? It's like way off there like this, right? And notice that we're on, 1/3, 2/3, right? So it's all about this background and the location and that your friend was there. You see what I mean? And that you were there because you took the shot, right? But this is basically what it's saying. It's like, here is the location and I was there, okay? So another great way of just, noticing how powerful the horizon line is, a compositional tool, as an abstraction of just how you're breaking up the shape of the frame as puzzle pieces, okay? Okay, let's keep moving forward.
This is extremely useful for concept art, because
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, you just really want to show that focus in there.
Anytime you have to make a picture, you're dealing with what we're talking about today, period, right? Picture making involves composition, no way around it. And that's when you really get to see how of a professional someone is or not, because there's a lot of people that can paint out there and they put together pictures. Composition's terrible. It's like how they organize the elements makes the picture fall apart, right? So let's just mow through these because we still have a lot to talk about. We only have 20 minutes left. I just want you to see, here's another one with low, really low line, high sky, low ground, like we started off earlier, right? And it's like, why? Well, to Swenley's thing on perspective, we're looking up. We want these guys to feel powerful with this low line, and they're reaching over the edge of the mountain, right? There's a lot of other stuff going on here I don't want to get into yet, but that's the basis of the farm. Same here, right? This is from, I was going to say Robo 6. What was the name of this film? This is the Disney movie with the robot that's a nurse.
Big Hero 6?
Yes, Big Hero 6, thank you. So this Big Hero 6, look, really the same composition. You see, right? The only different, low ground plane. So there's a thing above that's big, that's important. Here we're showing the heroes come over into the sun. Here we want to show off the building, and the sign is like right in front of it, right? Tells you exactly what it is. You get to see the little characters come driving in, and it's like, wow, look at the lab, right? Like, look at where they work. That's the big deal here, right? Look at what they're showing us. So anyway, to close this section off of composition, this is composition first half, part 1, is be aware of framing, think of the farm, okay? Let's move on to the second half. Most of you know that I worked on Lion King at this point. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. This is a trick I learned at Disney. This is probably one of the first composition tricks that I actually learned and I could apply because it was so damn easy. And it's called pointing, all right? If you walk away with anything today at all, this is such a simple thing to walk away with and so powerful. It's like, you want people to look here, right? How do I do that? Something tells you to look there. It points. So Timon is going to jump off the branch into this yellow frame, all right, this ellipse. Now you'll notice subtly there's a second level of pointing as well. All these leaves, right, that are around the perimeter of this, everything points in here. Disney is infamous for this, right? Like pointing, 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 grass blades pointing, sky pointing, trees pointing, building architecture pointing, 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 pointing. Everything points, and so simple of a tool, and it just forces you to look where you're supposed to, or lead the eye, right? It makes us look there. Look, here's a character pointing, all right? Abstract. Notice the low ground plane, right? Notice the farm, low ground, big sky. Why? Because we need the water up there, right? We need that space to have the water act in, pointing down to Moana. This one I love. God darn it. Like, look at the pointing in here. Look at this. This goes down. That makes this big triangular shape that's here. All these rocks are like, look over at Zazu, right? Everything is like coming down. He is perfectly placed there. His head lands exactly where it's supposed to land, right? That's a good team effort of the storyboard artist. In the past, this would have been called a workbook, where they really started putting the layout together, background painters, the animator, everything's working here to make his head land right there at the peak of that arrow, you see? You'll also notice it's more subtle, but there's these concentric circles on the ground of the rocks. It's almost like a giant target, right, that he's supposed to stand in. Also notice it's lighter here and darker here. So I don't go there, I don't go there, I don't go there. And he walks on from the light, stops right there and bows. Boom. right where he's supposed to hit his mark, right? Perfection, right? Total perfection of all the teams coming together. So I'm going to close this off with, this is what homework looks like in mentorship when I'm teaching composition, is I teach students to see the abstractions. We study films, right? So you can see here, here's Dunkirk. Love this movie. And I teach you to get past all this. Yeah, it's soldiers on a pier at the ocean, right? Like if they're at Dunkirk, the Germans are coming, right? Blah, 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 blah. There's all this stuff going on. I just want you to see the simplicity, right? This is what I want you to get out of the shot. That's what it all boils down to. How are the puzzle pieces put together to create this composition? You see, that's what you want to try to get out of these studies, right? So this is by a student of mine named Sergio, who has really kicked butt, I got to say, on composition. Here's another one shot.
This is my favorite exercise. This is my favorite thing from today's session, I would say, or like even in general, because because people usually ask one question to me is like, how do you use force in, let's say, landscapes or something like that, And this is the place where it starts to kick in, like pointing in a certain direction. Now we have done a stream on this, like how you actually draw the figure in that kind of sense, where you just like use an arrow to like direct the whole pose in a certain direction. And now here it is, in scenery and landscapes and world building or whatever you can think of, just picture making in a way, and just using the arrows to actually just lead your eye, right? That's what.
Again, great point. Like no pun intended, but great point. Force is part of the pointing portion of composition. Force is a great pointer, right? It's directional and applied forces, and you use it as background elements to make us look at where we're supposed to go, leading the eye, right? Yeah, 100%. Again, excellent note. Okay, let's see. Back to Photoshop. I love abstraction. It's like I'm 52 now, and I feel like I've gotten to this place, not to say I'm Picasso, but I understand Picasso's move from going from all this realism and draftsmanship and understanding over all these years. He didn't go into abstraction, by the way, until he was about 54, 56 years old, right? And I get it. My brain wants to go here more. I love the abstraction of things. Force is an abstraction in a sense too. And I like all these shapes. I like how things are put together. I want to get you to this. That's what it looks like. It's not even a guy. He's just a black box. And look at how the shapes work and frame. All right. Look at how the triangles point, right? That's where you want to start getting to, where you want to think about when you're composing, right? One of the assignments, this just came out of this morning. So one of my students, Kyla, that I teach, I'm not sure, I think I saw her here earlier. I'm not sure she's still here, but one of the assignments I give is, hey, take a shot from the film and create numerous other camera angles and compositions from that shot and try to figure out what those different meanings are. So you can see Kyla did this, by the way, 4 times, right? So 3 times 4 is 12. She came up with 12 other shots based off of this one shot this morning, which was pretty damn impressive, just having the ability to even come up with that many, right? So most of our conversations today just led to the challenges of perspective. She had these figures too low to the ground compared to their height, compared to the composition. So you can see in red here, I said to her, look, if this guy was this close, he would be this tall. This guy would be here because the ground plane is right at this guy's back, right? So like being aware of like the height differences relative to perspective, relative to where they're standing compared to the guy, right? So we came up with this shot instead, but just moving around, top down shot, worm's eye, standing behind these 2 guys looking at the main character, right? Like, do you have the ability as an artist creatively to move that camera around? That is one of the demands, one of the big asks, one of the biggest asks of being a storyboard artist is knowing perspective well enough to move that darn camera around to Swenley's segments today, right? Anyway, so I'm going to close with that. Let's move on to the last, there's 2 more sections I still want to cover with you guys, right? So number 3 is acting. This is where force comes in. Right? Force figure drawing. You're all the people in the scenes, right? All the characters and what they're doing and how they're performing, the drama, the dynamism, getting the fluidity in the bodies working for you, right? All that stuff comes in here. That's how I drew this. This is a force drawing, right? This is the guy acting, reaching out for, in the scene, his girlfriend who's about to be who's about to be killed. That's actually what's going on here. And that's why he's acting like this, right? And it's in this, like, it's a very dystopian film. That's why everyone else is kind of robotic and just standing there acting like nothing's happening. And he's, to give you some little bit of backstory, he's taking a big risk here at being emotional because no one else is allowed to be. And all of a sudden he's revealing himself as to like, oh my God, you can't do this, right? Everyone else is acting like robots, right? So there's this big contrast going on there, right? But this is a forced drawing, right? What allowed me to pull this off, to get the drama, the perspective, the dynamism, the fluidity in the figure is forced figure drawing, right? So that's the first thing I want to share, is just when it comes to acting, force plays a huge part in this, and it allows you to draw the figure fast, right? One of the biggest benefits of drawing with force is you learn a system, and in that system you learn how to draw figures very quickly, right? The one thing you don't want to do is belabor a storyboard. Your job is to tell story, not to perfect a frame. Okay, so you have to draw fast and well and clear and get the point across. Okay, now I would say the biggest mistake I see with students sending me in board work at the beginning is this idea of ABC. Now it's so weird because in all the things that we teach at drawingforce.com, the alphabet keeps showing up. You could say 1, 2, 3, ABC. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about cleanup, and in cleanup, we talked about A to B and ABC as well, right? Because it was about arcs and points, right? There's all this kind of geometry really behind the cleanup. Well, it happens here as well. And what I mean by that is the mistake I see students make is when they draw from shot to shot, they only show, let me think of an example. Let's say a character is being given an apple, right? So here's a hand and here's an apple, right? It's like this, right? Here's like this person's thumb on this apple, right? And the character in here, in between the shots, is happy to receive the apple. But when they cut over to the shot, right, they're already smiling. Now, before that, they weren't smiling, okay? Over here, they were not smiling. Maybe they were angry, right? Until they got the apple, and then they're here smiling. That is not good, okay? What you wanna see is you wanna go here and go to the idea of, you know what? First they're angry, right? And then they smile, okay? This is called A to B. What that means is pretty much every shot on a board is 2 shots at least, not 1 shot. That's kind of more like doing beat boards. Like here's this moment, here's this moment, here's this moment. When you start getting performance and acting into the shots, you need to show change, right? Change is what creates performance. Okay, change, 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 change. We want to see the character go from angry to happy. We want to see that act out. Because imagine once you put this into animatic form, you put on a timeline, you show the apple and they're happy. We didn't get to see the action happen. We didn't get to see the performance, right? You want to see them go, and then they're happy about it, right? It's like, okay, that's in the story. I can see the change. So super important. Now, what about ABC? Well, ABC, like we talked about with the force line, if you're going from A to B, this is initially A to B, you can get a straight line. As soon as you want a curve in there, you need you need B here, you need this to become C because there's some kind of arc. Well, that kind of stuff, first of all, can happen in the boarding. You might have something in the boarding that's got an arc in it, and you need to show that arc. Maybe someone's throwing a football, and that's really important to show the time of the ball go from A, get thrown up in the air, it gets over here up in the air, and then lands over here. So sometimes it's as simple as that, this reason for ABC. You need to show something go through a curve. Sometimes you go through numerous facial expressions or acting changes in that one shot, like I showed you before. Maybe this person goes from angry, and then they're here angry, they get happy, and then they start to cry, right? They were so angry with this person, they had some kind of big argument, they're angry, and then they smile, and that breaks them into tears, right? Because they're like, wow, I can't believe that you had the humility to give me this gift, right? So all of a sudden there's another change. So now you need an ABC. Now, I have quite a few friends, ironically, that are storyboard artists at Pixar. And one of the things I remember them even saying to me in the past was a lot of newbies come in and they don't want to get trapped with the beat board scenario, right, of just one shot. So they overdo the boarding. and it's like they're practically animating, right? So you don't want to do that either. There's this very fine line of what is too much and what is too little in the acting, okay? So you want to just hit like keys, especially where there's change that occurs, right? And that's pretty much it. You don't want to go beyond that. You don't want to be in between it. You don't want to do breakdowns in between the keys. You don't need it, okay? So acting is a big deal. I wanted to share with you this website based off of this. This is one thing that one of my students named Eric brought to my attention, that now when I teach boarding, I bring everyone over here to this channel. On YouTube, if you type in the search bar, Nickelodeon Animatic, you will get a page filled with different storyboards. Now, granted, it's television, okay? But different storyboards that Nickelodeon has posted in animatic form, right? So let's go take a look, right? I have this all set up here. They have all different kinds of, like I said, all different kinds of animatics, right? Here, let's go back a page. So they have SpongeBob here. They have Korra, very different, by the way. So if we look at SpongeBob, for instance, we were talking about cleanup in television. This is pretty darn clean, right? One line, one shot, right? Per idea, very clean. Look at, this is a masterclass, quite honestly. If you know what to look for and you watch this and you look at the final scene in the bottom right corner, this will teach you what I was just talking about with the acting. Where are the keys relative to the full animation that's in the bottom corner? Like, go check this out, go study it. This is, like I said, a master class in how much is too much or how little is too little, right? Perspective is in here, composition is in here, acting is in here, right? So check that out, right? And I think it's really great for you to look at the other ones as well. If you go to the Korra piece, which is more of an action show, right? It's very different. In the action ones, camera is moving all over the place, right? Sitcoms and comedy, usually the camera's pretty locked down. You look at like Family Guy, SpongeBob, any kid cartoons comedy. The camera goes just from like room to room to room. It locks down and that's it. Look at the camera in this, right? I love that they have the actual footage here too, right? Again, you'll see how many, how much do you need to move the character around, right? Notice that there's also a mixture of 3D and 2D in here, okay? So storyboarding, I would say if there's any change technologically, besides the fact that everyone's drawing digitally, is a combination of bringing 3D and 2D together within the boards, right? So there's, let's see, I don't know if it's in this one in particular. There's a scene where they're in the room. I think it was at the beginning. And, the building is in 3D. Yeah, here, let me bring you over here. So you can see there's a 3D model here, right, of the construction of the building that they're in, right? And that allows you to get that perspective right. And then you're placing the characters down in that space, right? So I wanted to share this with you guys more than anything to recognize this resource, which I am like blown away is on the internet. I just think it's spectacular, where you can learn more about boarding and more about the acting and pay attention to ABC. And again, how important force actually is to all this stuff to get that, to be able to draw fast and get motion, get fluidity and make sense of all of that, okay? All right, we're almost done in time here. Last but not least, I'm gonna close this off with editing. You think, well, I'm a board artist, like, why am I editing? Like, what does that even mean? What I basically mean in editing is, like, how are you cutting from one shot to another, right? When you go from one panel, let's say panel A to panel B, first of all, typically something happens in here. It's like comics. In comics, they call this the gutter, right? And what you put in A compared to B is really important. When I went to SVA in New York, I took a lot of film classes as well, like history of film and such. And I think it was, I want to say the country was Russia, if I'm not mistaken, but they did a lot of like experimenting with film and saying what is in A and what's in B. It's very different, for instance, if in A, let's say we have, yeah, let me make this bigger there. Let's say we have a drawing of an apple again, right? So here's an apple. And then in the next shot, somebody's sitting in a corner upset about something, right? Like here they are, they're sitting in the corner, right? It's like we go from here to here. What is the meaning behind that, right? That's very different than if we said, here's a shot of an apple, and then the next shot is an apple tree, right? Very different. And it insinuates psychologically many different things to us as an audience, right? And progresses the story forward. You know, and in film, by the way, I said this is the gutter. In film, this would be your edit, right? This is your edit. This is your cut. Like, what kind of edit are you doing here? Is it a cut? Is it a cross dissolve? A slow cross dissolve? You know, is it a is it a smash cut? Is it there's different ways of slicing the edit itself, right? If it's like Star Wars has a lot of like horizontal bars, like and verticals that basically cut us from one scene to another, right? So I'm going to close on this. I just want you to be aware of the idea that editing is also really important. It's like how you tell the story from one shot to another shot to another shot is really, really crucial to the act of telling story. In fact, it might be one of the biggest ones in all of everything we showed you today. Because even if you had none of these drawing skills and you just doodled the way I did here today, you're still able to evoke ideas, and how you jump from one frame to another frame is extremely, extremely powerful. Maybe in the future, we'll do a more blown out session on this. I also wanted to close off with the fact that, you know, at drawingforce.com, I'm trying to remember the name of this. What we're doing is we have a, yeah, I'm gonna get it for you guys. Only until July 6th, we are doing a sale right now for mentorship. I noticed a couple of people asked about it today, again, during the, in the chat, right? Yeah, so the coupon for that is summer mentorship. It's for the 12 session package. It's $400 off, 400 bucks off. Okay, that is a big deal. Okay, that's a big deal to me. I don't know about you, but that's a big deal, right? So that's only for the 12 session pack, and it's only good to July 6th. It actually ends, I think, the night of July 5th, if I'm not mistaken. So let's say July 5th, you know, midnight, 12 you know, a.m. basically. Well, we'll say, yeah, we'll say 11:59. 11:59 on the 5th is when this gets shut down, right? So if you're interested in mentorship at all, you can always feel free to email me at mike@drawingforce.com if you have other questions. Otherwise, go check this out, right? So this will set you up for the summer. 12, usually we teach students once a week. That'll fill you for the summer, give you something to do, focus on your education, right? And who knows, maybe someday you'll become a storyboard artist, right? All right, with that, I'm going to close off. I hope that we were able to instill you with some inspiring information today. You know, if you're learning how to board, I think watching film or TV shows and actually literally just sketching stuff in your sketchbook and studying is a great place to start. You know, study the masters, right? Go to the Steven Spielbergs, go to the animated films that are out there, you know, and go check out what those people are doing. You know, the cinematographers out there that really, you know, James Cameron, right? And the guys that he works with. Spielberg works with a guy named Janusz Kaminski, right? Like, look at those movies and see how they're telling the shots. You got J.J. Abrams, right? These are like masters of the craft as to how are things put together? What are the shots to tell story? How are they composed, right? All that stuff is going in there. It's amazing, right? Film is just such an amazing art form with so many different skills attached to it. So go check out the boarding of it, okay? Thank you, Mritunjay and Swenley, for another exciting Force Friday. Again, if you guys have questions about, you know, the audience has any questions about the summer discount, just email me, mike@drawingforce.com. Otherwise, we will see you next week with another awesome session. Take care, guys. Thanks again for your help.
Yes.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Bye-bye. All right. I shut the stream down. So thank you guys.